Next in the broadcast, after yesterday's announcement of new cigarette tax hikes, the government today also unveils its plans to double taxes on property and automobiles. The move will raise badly needed revenue, but also hits the average citizen. The Bank of Korea takes a wait-and-see approach over the impact of last month's rate cut with a rate freeze this month. Analysts expect one more rate cut before the year is out. And U.S. President Barack Obama creates a broad coalition of 10 Arab nations with the aim of countering and destroying the extremist group known as the Islamic State militants. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Primetime News, live from Seoul. I'm Kang.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us. We begin with the government's war on tobacco. Just a day after the announcement to nearly double cigarette prices, a $52 million lawsuit by the National Health Insurance Service against Korea's biggest tobacco companies.
Exactly, and never before has a Korean government organization taken on such a lawsuit. Hyun-bin has our top story.
The National Health Insurance Service is suing Korea's largest tobacco manufacturers. This marks the first time a public entity filed a lawsuit on the matter. The state health agency is seeking compensation from KT&G Corporation, Philip Morris Korea, and British American Tobacco Korea to recover medical costs incurred due to what the agency claims are tobacco-related diseases, such as lung cancer. The organization pointed out the causal relationship between smoking and the illnesses, using 19 years of medical records in its database. It pointed to a much higher occurrence of cancer in smokers compared to non-smokers, and also aimed to show the tobacco companies violated laws and failing to fully explain the addictive and hazardous chemicals present in their products. In their defense, the tobacco companies argued that they cannot be held responsible for an individual's choice to smoke or not smoke, and that they have done what is legally required of them to warn the public about the dangers of smoking. It's a high-profile $52 million lawsuit that could open the floodgates for similar legal action if the National Health Insurance Service wins. It would also signify a rare loss for Big Tobacco, which successfully defended itself earlier this year against 7 individual plaintiffs who are seeking compensation over claims very similar to the ones in this trial. The state health agency, however, feels its case as much stronger. Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
So first came the cigarettes, and now taxes on automobiles and homes may be next in line. If the Korean government has its way, taxes on the three will go up in the near future. Now, this move is raising concerns about the impact it will have on average consumers and questions about the government's true intentions. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
One day after the health ministry announced plans to nearly double cigarette prices, the Ministry of Security and Public Administration announced its plan to double automobile and residence taxes over the next 3 years, noting that's been fixed for 2 decades and needs to be adjusted to reflect current circumstances. The move would certainly lend a helping hand to local governments who are suffering from fiscal deficits, with the nation collecting just 45% of targeted tax revenue in the first half. Like the proposed hike in cigarette prices, the changes to the automobile and residence tax code will first have to be approved by the National Assembly before going into effect. They'll also have to sway public opinion. If the legislation takes effect as initially proposed, over 70% of the price for a pack of cigarettes would be in taxes. The cigarette price hike is expected to raise consumer prices up by 0.6 percentage points. Under the assumption that consumer prices will rise by 3% each year, the Korea Institute of Public Finance says the price for a pack of cigarettes would be double what it is now in 5 years' time. If the changes take effect, the government will rake in an estimated $2.7 billion in additional taxes. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said Thursday that the additional tax revenue would go toward bolstering the nation's safety and health infrastructure. But the ministry's tax department chief admitted to reporters on Friday that the latest series of tax hike proposals have a number of purposes, one of them being to raise tax revenue. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's central bank held its key interest rate steady at 2.25% for this month. It was a widely expected move not to move after last month's cut, but expectations are growing over another cut in the next couple of months. Our Hwang Ji has the details.
The Bank of Korea has chosen to take a wait-and-see approach over the impact of last month's rate cut. It decided to leave the key rate steady at 2.25% in September during its monthly monetary policy meeting on Friday. The bank said although consumer spending is showing signs of picking up after being hit hard by the ferry disaster in April, the nation's business sentiment remains sluggish. The central bank governor, however, dismissed concerns that the Korean economy is headed for deflation.
Korea's expected inflation rate is running in the 2% range, and considering that, it's hard to say the economy is under deflationary pressure.
Experts say the bank could lower the rate once more before the year is out. They cite the domestic economy's still feeble pace of recovery, despite recent government stimulus measures and the central bank's rate cut that was intended to prop up growth. But another cut, they say, may not cut it.
The weak pace of recovery stems from the nation's structural problems, not because there aren't much changes in the key rate or government stimulus measures. So even if the bank lowers the rate, it likely won't have a major impact.
The central bank is also under growing pressure from the government to join efforts aimed at boosting growth. The government has been expressing concerns that the Korean economy might fall into Japan-style stagnation. Experts add, though, that the Federal Reserve's earlier than expected decision to raise its key interest rate due to the strengthening U.S. economy could be another variable down the road. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
The political deadlock shows no signs of ending at the National Assembly. At the core is a stalemate over a bill to investigate April's ferry disaster. And now internal discord within the main opposition party threatens to further complicate matters. Our Chery has the details.
Still deadlocked 2 weeks into the regular parliamentary session, the floor leaders of the ruling and opposition parties have agreed to seek by next week a compromise on the contested bill that will set up a probe into April's ferry disaster. After first reaching a bipartisan agreement on the bill, the opposition has since backtracked, insisting that ferry victims' families have a greater voice in the investigation process.
For us to move forward in our negotiations, the opposition needs to clearly state its position on the bill.
But internal discord within the main opposition party has emerged as another obstacle. Nominations made by the party floor leader for co-chairs of the Reform Committee and its interim leadership have been met with resistance from within the party. One of those proposed is Chungang University professor Lee Sang-don, who has led reforms of the conservative ruling party in the past.
I settled on a progressive and reform-minded conservative figure for co-chair.
Another nominee is Seoul National University professor An Kyung-hwan, who was the reform advisor to the previous opposition presidential candidate. With a long list of pending economy and reform-related bills, the ruling party, which has a majority in the assembly, is now considering unilaterally getting parliament back in business. The ruling side has been pressuring National Assembly Speaker Chung Hee-hwa to exercise his authority to call a voting session with or without the opposition. Seeking to break the impasse, the Speaker on Friday asked each standing committee chair for their cooperation to get the parliament running again. Chery, Arirang News.
We now turn to a high-level meeting between North Korea and the EU over human rights. Radio Free Asia reports that Kang Seok-ju, Pyongyang's Secretary for International Affairs, met with Stavros Lambrinidis, the EU Special Representative for Human Rights, where Lambrinidis reportedly expressed grave concerns about North Korea's dire human rights situation. Kang is currently on a 5-nation tour that includes stops in Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, and Mongolia. Lambrinidis is said to be the only EU official to have met with Kang. The recent detainment of 3 American nationals should deter Westerners from traveling to North Korea, but it seems a curiosity to see one of the most isolated countries in the world override such concerns. The number of European travelers in particular is on the rise. 5,000 to 6,000 European tourists travel to the north annually, and foreign tourism in the north has increased by 20% in the first half of this year. North Korea has been heavily promoting outdoor attractions like hiking, cycling, golfing, and even skiing. However, tour operators say American tourists have dipped since 2 were arrested in April.
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chery from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Korean students often jump at the chance to study abroad as it adds to their competitiveness in the local job market and also makes them more appealing in the globalized world that we live in. But our Connie Kim tells us the global education that they're seeking may be right under their noses.
Get all the benefits of studying abroad without ever having to leave Korea. 2 additional foreign universities have opened at the Incheon Global Campus in Korea's western port city. It's part of the Incheon Free Economic Zone's plan to house competitive universities from around the world. Utah University and Belgium's Ghent University began classes earlier this month. They joined State University of New York and George Mason University. Studying the same curriculum, receiving the same diploma, and having the opportunity to study at their foreign university's main campus for one school year is what's luring an increasing number of Korean students.
It's a unique experience where students get to interact with exchange students from the main campus, and we're able to study with actual professors from the main campus that are actually well experienced and very knowledgeable.
The strategy came about in part because Seoul sends more students to the U.S. than any other city in the world. Data shows more than 56,000 students from the Korean capital went to the U.S. to study for degrees between 2008 and 2013. But will the Incheon Global Campus be able to stem the flow of young Korean talent leaving the country for their further education?
The Seongdo Global Campus offers students a diverse set of unique experiences, but pundits say it still has a number of challenges to address before it can ascend the ranks among would-be college students.
In order to retain talented Korean students, the key is to bring in universities with high name value. As of now, not many of the schools in Seongdo are world-class universities. It's also important to balance out the proportion of foreign and local students.
The Incheon Global Campus wants to increase the number of global universities from 4 to 10 by 2025. School officials say their future success will ultimately depend on the quality of institutions they're able to attract. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Here's an interesting study for those of you who want to conquer the world of math, maybe. A U.S. study says the simpler the words for numbers are, the more it helps younger children study the subject. In other words, it's easier to master math if you learn it in Korean, Chinese, Japanese, or Turkish. For example, there are just 10 words used for numbers in Korean or Japanese, while English has over 20. This issue becomes more apparent starting with the number 11. While the Korean and Chinese languages have words that translate into 10-1 for 11 to express that number, English has a separate name altogether. Although this may seem like a minor issue, the researchers say these additional mental steps can lead to more errors when solving problems.
Korea was a popular destination for Hollywood stars promoting their latest films last year, but the red carpet this year has been rather quiet. Tinseltown's A-listers have instead made a beeline toward China's biggest cities for the star treatment. Our Park Ji-won explains why.
From Tom Cruise in January and Robert Downey Jr. 3 months later to promote Iron Man 3. to Will Smith the following month, and then Brad Pitt, Tilda Swinton, and Chris Evans in the summer. The list of Hollywood actors making stops in Korea last year was long and star-studded. But this year's list is much shorter. Jackie Chan came in January to promote his Police Story sequel, and Megan Fox visited in August. But beyond them, Korea's red carpet hasn't been graced by many Hollywood stars in 2014. That's because more of them are choosing China to promote their new films in the Asian market. Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant, John Cusack, and Natalie Portman have all visited China this year.
Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, China is actively trying to open itself up in the realm of culture and is now much more accepting of Western cultures. This is leading more Hollywood stars to visit the huge Chinese market as they eye commercial success.
In terms of box office revenue, China raked in some $3.6 billion last year, making it the world's second largest behind North America. This year, the fourth installment of the Transformers series was a global hit with $1 billion box office revenue worldwide. About $160 million of that came from the Chinese market. It's a market that's expected to continue growing, which means the long line of Hollywood stars heading to China is expected to grow even longer in the years to come. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And turning now to the Middle East, 10 Arab countries have pledged to join Washington's fight against Islamic State militants.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, the Islamic State group continues to wreak havoc across Iraq and Syria. What kind of support should the U.S. now expect from the Arab world?
Well, the 10 Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, said they have agreed to do their share in the fight against the militant group. This as the CIA revised up its estimate, saying more than 31,000 IS fighters have entered Iraq and Syria. Our Kwon So-ah has his story.
President Obama's broad coalition of U.S. allies to counter Islamic State militants is gradually taking shape. 10 Arab nations, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Egypt, and Lebanon, have vowed to support the international coalition, which aims to ultimately destroy the extremist group. This pledge came on Thursday at a meeting of the nation's foreign ministers and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in the Saudi coastal city of Jeddah. Kerry stressed the critical role Arab nations play in the joint communique. They will have to provide military support, humanitarian aid, and ensure the flow of funds and foreign fighters to IS is cut off.
And certainly the effort to repudiate once and for all the dangerous, the offensive, the insulting distortion of Islam that ISIL propaganda attempts to spread throughout the region and the world.
Kerry also dismissed Russia's questioning of the legality of the coalition without prior UN Security Council authorization. He said that if the situation wasn't so serious in Ukraine, it would be amusing to think about Moscow raising the issue of international law. Washington's European allies have been offering their own forms of support. Germany says it's happy to provide weapons and ammunition. Britain and France have not ruled out joining U.S.-led military action in Iraq, but are wary about joining potential operations against IS positions in Syria. Here in Korea, Seoul's foreign ministry reiterated Thursday that an aid package worth $1.2 million will be sent to help Iraqis displaced by the crisis. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And as the White House prepares for another long-term struggle against terror, Americans across the country honored the near 3,000 victims from the 9/11 attacks 13 years ago. In a ceremony at the Pentagon on Thursday, U.S. President Barack Obama praised the resilience of the surviving family members and the strength of the American people.
They sought to do more than bring down buildings or murder our people. They sought to break our spirit and to prove to the world that their power to destroy was greater than our power to persevere and to build.
Later that evening, New York City illuminated the night sky in their annual tribute to those killed on September 11th, as two giant beams of light recreated the image of the Twin Towers. And bringing you the latest on the Oscar Pistorius trial, the South African track star has been found guilty of manslaughter in the shooting death of his girlfriend last year. Judge Thokozile Masipa said Thursday that the Paralympic athlete had acted negligently and unreasonably when he fired off his gun on the night of February 14th.
In this matter, the unanimous decision of this court is the following. On count 1, murder read, the accused is found not guilty and is discharged. Instead, he is found guilty of culpable homicide.
The ruling comes a day after the world-famous athlete was cleared of all murder charges due to a lack of clear evidence. Pistorius will appear for sentencing in the next couple of weeks, in which he faces up to 15 years in prison. And finally, famed director Zack Snyder has released a sneak peek of Batman's latest ride, which will be featured in his next superhero epic. Snyder unveiled the first official photo of the brand new Batmobile on Twitter this Friday. The vehicle will be used in the upcoming blockbuster Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, featuring Ben Affleck as the Dark Knight. But fans will have to wait a little longer as the Caped Crusader and the Man of Steel are set to clash on the big screen in May of 2016. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here next week.
Hello and welcome to sports. First up, it's the ISSF World Championships of Shooting. South Korean women took bronze in team 50-meter rifle, 3 positions for their first ever medal in that event. Team of Jeongmira, Yoo Se-young, and Kim Se-ra combined for third best 1,735 points with 71 inner tens. Germany came in first and China second in the same event. Meanwhile, history was made in the first round of the Evian Championships as Korea's Kim Hyo-ju shot the lowest round score in any major. 19-year-old holed 10 birdies to lead after the first day of play at 10 under par. It's the lowest round score in either a men's or ladies major and surpasses the previous record of 62. Meanwhile, the second round is currently underway. And leaving that there, let's get to Friday's KBO matchup between the Lotte Giants and the NC Dinos. The Giants send out Lee Sang-hwa, the Dinos' Thad Weber. Second inning, NC's Eric Thames smacks the long ball, and the later Ji Seok-kun drives one in. It's 2-0 NC Dinos. Now more in the third. This time it's Mo Chang-min bringing two home. Then fifth inning, it's Thames again. He doubles for 2 RBIs, and NC gets the dominating lead. The Dinos go on to win this one 6-0. And looking at the other games, Tusan beats Hanwha 6-1, Samsung crushes Kia 14-4, and SK blanks Nexon 3-0. And going to the FIBA World Cup, the United States advanced to the finals after thumping Lithuania 96-68. And an 8-point game at the half was blown wide open, largely thanks to 16 third-quarter points by two-guard James Harden. However, point man Kyrie Irving led all scorers with 18. They're now in the final on Sunday against either France or Serbia, who play their semifinal game later at 5 a.m. if you're watching in Korea. And that wraps it up for now. This has been Stephen Che. Next is your weather update. Have a great weekend.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. Hope you've been able to stay dry from the unexpected showers we're experiencing here in Seoul as well as other regions. Now, the rain along with bouts of thunder and lightning are a result of instability in the atmosphere. Better keep that umbrella handy through later tonight because the central regions are looking at another 5 to 30 millimeters and areas down south will get less than 5 millimeters. As for Saturday, the central regions will start off with a sunny morning while cloudy skies begin the day down south. Also, a heads up for those of you along the eastern coast as there is a slim chance that you may get light passing sprinkles. Here are the numbers for Saturday. Seoul jumps to 29 degrees while Daegu and Gwangju hit the high 20s. Moving on to other places, Daejeon and Jeju make it to 28 and 26, Dokdo and Mangkimgang to 22 and 24. That's all the updates for this hour. Enjoy the rest of your Friday evening, and of course, I'll be back with more updates after midnight. See you then.
All right, thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's Primetime News for this week. And I'm Kang Chery. See you at the same time next Monday.
And I'm Sean Lim. I'll see you then. And also coming up for a late night edition at midnight. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.